Hey everybody, welcome to Moments Off the Mat. My name is Mike Clayton. I'm National Coaches Education Program Manager, joined by Mike Willis in our communications office, and our special guest today, Eric Everard from Vista Ridge High School here in Colorado. Welcome everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Mike.
Eric, we had a chance to get to know each other during your coach education journey, and since you're a local guy here in Colorado, we meet for lunch once a week and kind of talk coaching, and got to really develop our relationship that way. And you know, that's kind of over the time now, like you've gone through your coach education journey, through your coaching here at Vista Ridge and with Cry Wolf. A lot of neat opportunities now that you're using to take what you've done with Cry Wolf and Vista Ridge, and now you're helping us to build athlete leadership programs. And that kind of sparked a conversation where you talked about the stories that you're telling to your athletes. And after I saw those and stopped crying, because they're just so powerful and emotional and uplifting, I shared them with Mike Willis, and maybe Mike, that's kind of where we can start off is how that relationship has been handed over and now where we go.
Where did the name Cry Wolf come from? Because I think we all are familiar with the roots and what it means, but for a wrestling club, that seems a little interesting.
Yeah, so Cry Wolf, the idea, it has a negative connotation, which made it easy to get the name. So to get the website, to get the social media, to have a standard handle across all the social media. But it goes back to, we had a wrestler, his name Jeff Flippin. He came into the season 336 pounds to wrestle heavyweight. So he ended up losing 55 pounds as a junior just to wrestle. And he went into regionals with like a 5-4 record. And he pinned his first two matches. I know one of them was ranked. They both might have been ranked. But when they line you up to announce you for the regional finals, and the heavyweights last, so he's standing there by himself. And I was sitting on the side of the mat, and I just snapped this picture, and I had this thought about, the boy who cried wolf. And I was like, man, his opponents didn't see him coming. They should have been more concerned about him, and they weren't. And that's where the idea where we're the Vista Ridge Wolves. And with that Cry Wolf story, what if you're the wolf? What is that story from the wolf's perspective, right? Being patient, sitting on the edge of the wood line. And I actually wrote out the fable with the twist of that on it. And that's something I can share with you. I made a little poster of the fable that basically the wolf is just sitting there on the tree line waiting, and it's getting darker and watching the people come and go and come and go. And then he comes out of the wood line and nobody's there to save him. And I did this meme at the time right afterwards where his opponents should have cried wolf, thinking the wolves. And then it just sort of evolved. Like most good ideas, it wasn't, I can't sit here and go, oh, it was all planned, but I think it evolved into something, and it makes people go, why cry wolf? And then once you share the story, then they're like, oh, well, that makes sense, because it's normally that negative connotation. And we turn it into a positive, like what I think most wrestlers do.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing, Eric.
How is your coach education journey? We're going to be talking about these videos and hopefully sharing either some links, in the description below, and maybe even showing some here on the video. How is your coach education journey made these extra things that you're doing maybe more deliberate or more influential with your program?
Well, like I just shared with the Cry Wolf, it came about by accident and is evolved into something. The same thing with the coaching journey. So we had a wrestler, there was an extra slot at the developmental camp a couple years ago. I think it was 2018, April. And one of my wrestlers signed up and got in. Well, that's for the top 40 girls in the nation, and they're traveling in from all over. And then we had our wrestler, Gabby Norman, who just got in. And honestly, she was outclassed. She shouldn't have been in that room, but she was, and embraced it. And I think she cried 2 of the 3 or 4 days while she was in there, but knowing that she could compete on that level and practice at that level. Well, because she was going, I said, hey, can I come watch? So I was in the room. That evolved to Terry saying, well, do you want to be on the mat? And I was like, can I do that? And got connected. So I'm from Wisconsin. So I know there's some Wisconsin connections in there. And I was able to be on the mat and actually help coach a little bit at that cadet level with the girls, and having a wrestler there. And then that's when I reached out to you and I started doing more of the coaching education, and we connected, and here we are 2 years later. And the just starting off to do it for the right reasons and having a wrestler in there and wanting to just be a better coach for them. And I coached boys for years, but I wanted to be a better girls coach. So how do we do that? What's the education? What's out there? I wanted to get better at freestyle coaching because that's where the girls are going. And I reached out to you. I did the copper again. We did the bronze. That evolved into the silver. Um, yeah, it just sort of evolved into this wonderful thing. And then being here in the Springs makes it easy to meet up for dinner and get that extra mentoring and engagement, and then the connections with the other coaches to learn from. So I definitely feel like a small fish in a big pond that I get to learn from, all these different levels of coaching and experience and athletes. And at the end of the day, just trying to be a better coach for them so I can help promote and grow the sport. Because frankly, we need more guys doing that. We need to help to put the females at the front line, make them the head coaches, get them involved. And somewhere along the journey, I think when you start doing good things and that karma comes back, Tori Adams, who is one of the pioneers of women's wrestling, was on the first national team. She happened to reach out, and her son happened to be going to Vista Ridge and said, "Hey, we want to coach. I'm not going to name drop, but you can Google me." And I Googled her and I said, "Well, whatever you want to do." So having her on the coaching staff the past 2 years, I just listen to people smarter than me, and they say, do this, or people like yourself, "Hey, you should do the gold certification." And I'm dumb enough to try. So
Eric, it looks like the YouTube channel has been around for about 3 years. What was kind of the idea behind that, and where did that fall in the timeline of like creating the Cry Wolf Wrestling Club?
like anything else, learning, asking the wrestlers, what do you follow? We stay away from Snapchat and, some of that stuff, which evolved with Safe Sports. So that's always a better thing to do that. But YouTube and our Facebook page and our Twitter account, not really into Twitter. I'm learning it. YouTube, it was a place to share videos, but I was using regular songs off the radio. So then they'd be blocked. So I couldn't put them out there. So I found this other website where it's royalty free, and that's what we're seeing now. It's like anything else. What's the easiest way to share the information, to bring the attention to the wrestlers that put in all this time and hard work? And I think there's a population out there. We watch USA Wrestling, we watch all these videos, these interviews, but it's at that high level. The top 10 wrestlers in the entire US for the girls, and same with the guys, or even the NCAA Division I. It's this high level where I think a lot of the youth or middle school or people thinking about trying wrestling in ninth grade, they don't know who they are. They haven't been involved. So I wanted to start bringing a voice in the story of people that they could relate to and maybe see in the hallway, or maybe wrestled on a team with, and hear their story, where that might promote growing the sport, and they might give it a try because the story's coming from somebody they know or they can easily relate to, instead of, a Jordan Burroughs or a Helen Maroulis. I mean, they're very motivating and inspirational, but that's the 1% of the 1% of the 0.5%, so I just wanted to do something where we could promote the program that related to that middle school female or boy thinking about wrestling. So how do we do that? And that's what I'm trying to figure out. I think I'm getting closer, but I don't know. I'm willing to take risk and be wrong instead of just sit and let it pass me by.
So it looks like you made a lot of progress, just watching the kind of genesis of the videos. Where do you see this going, and what kind of direction do you want it to continue in?
Ultimately, we've been around for a while. I remember when computers were first coming out, and the idea that Bill Gates wanted to have a personal computer in everyone's home, right? And everyone thought he was crazy. For me, I think wrestling should be free. So how do we get to a point to make wrestling free? So at the Cry Wolf, I turned in all the paperwork. It's just being processed to make it a nonprofit. but the goal is to have a free sport, especially for those who can't afford it, and expose people. And with club and even at the high school level, your activity fees are going up, and the current state we're in, what's the future of the sport? I just want to have a safe place where if people want to get exposed to wrestling, they can. And if that takes them somewhere, cool. If it doesn't, cool. If they simply make a lifelong friend out of it, that's even better. So I don't know where it's going to go, and I'm just going to keep doing it while people keep joining me. So for example, today for my work, we had a team building, and we went for a little hike here in Colorado Springs, short little 2-mile. And I just sent it out to the team. I said, hey, I'm hiking. And I had 2 families show up. So if you have 2 families show up or 1 wrestler show up, well, they're getting something out of it. So as long as I still have that reinforcement, I guess I'll just keep doing it.
How does your background help you in these moments, right? With your career military training, how does that prepare you for what you do now as a coach?
I think I'm able to stay, as we get older, we're able to stay more calm, and that calm confidence. But I think it's in our nature as wrestlers to be excitable, and especially when you're in the match with them and you can't go help. But just trying to be able to be that calm presence and have that confidence where when they're, during a match, when they're excited and they're frustrated and they're on the brink and they want to give up and all that stuff, where I have enough experience and education and training where I can be calm in those moments, where I think a lot of new coaches or people in general, a lot of times they can't, because they can't separate. And having deployed twice and been in the military and done those things and had those experiences, I'm able to keep things in perspective and maybe frame them a different way. And being in a military town, we have a lot of family that are military, so I'm able to connect with the parents. It helps me with a level of that trust up front, at least respect, where you have that common bond with some of the military families. And then the families help to promote the program just as much, if not more, than I do, because when you have that parent trust and confidence and they see what you're trying to do, they get on board. And that's where you really start having a program and legacy develop. So where I see it going and how it helps me, like anything, I told the parents at our barbecue the other weekend, just to let you know, parents, I'm telling all your wrestlers that we don't have it all figured out. We don't know, but I'm willing to take some risk, right? And I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to make those mistakes, but involve the parents and involve the wrestlers, involve them to help build this. And I want to have a program where 10, 20 years from now, the wrestlers who came through this, they want their children to be a part of this program, whether I'm here or not. Hopefully it's something that somebody else eventually takes over and continues on, because we can't do it forever, but I'm going to try. So.
Well, I think something that's really cool about the videos and the social media footprint in general is that you're going to leave a legacy, a digital legacy for people years in the future to kind of see what was going on, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, eventually. But I feel like a lot of, maybe not a lot, but some coaches kind of are hesitant with social media. Maybe, again, it's not really their forte. It is work. It is additional work that you need to put into. When did you realize it was important for your program to have a social media footprint? And what would you say to maybe encourage other coaches to consider doing something like you're doing with Cry Wolf?
Well, one, building off of what Mike asked about how my education experience, military help, you can't get to trust without respect. So you have to build that respect, and to get that respect and trust with the family, to know that we're going to use their image in a positive manner. We're going to frame the video in a positive manner. I'm going to make sure the angles are appropriate with some singlets and uniforms, stuff like that, and make sure I don't violate that. But you have to have that level of trust and confidence. I've always done some sort of highlight that we normally show at our barbecue. We've been at Vista Ridge for 4 years, and I'm with the same coach. But before that, we were at Sand Creek High School for a decade. So we'd show the video at the end of season banquet or barbecue, and it was always an event. But you get in this trouble of how do you share that? How do you put it on a CD? Do you put it on a memory stick? And then, over the past 15 years, we've had social media develop more, and just getting out there, learning it. But I think it all goes back to that trust and respect with the parents, with your administration, knowing you're going to do it right, doing the paperwork. So we have them sign at the beginning of every year that we can use their image or video and stuff. And the stories that you've seen, so that came from Gabby Norman. She approached me saying, hey, her mom asked me to do her 18th birthday video. So I took a bunch of old pictures, put them together, nice little slideshow with some music. Nothing too crazy, but it turned out nice. And she came to me and said, hey, I want to record this story for my sister. And she's like, can you put together a video or something? And I was like, well, why don't I record you saying it and then put the video to you? And that's sort of how it evolved. I'd love to sit here and say, yeah, it was my idea. But the best ideas have come from the wrestlers and from the families, but only after you have that got to that level of trust. And that's something that Terry Steiner had said to me 2 years ago. I asked him, what's the difference between coaching girls and boys? And he said, boys will respect you for what you've done or because you can beat them in the wrestling room. Girls, they have to trust you if you expect to coach them. And then you go, well, how do I build trust? And I just approach it like, how do you make a new friend? How do you build a friend? And you have to be vulnerable and transparent, and then it evolves. So what you're seeing now, we've been at the school for 4 years. We finally, everyone in the program had us same 3 core coaches for all 4 years. The wrestlers who had prior coaches have revolved out. So this year is a tipping point. And that's where I said, I need to do more of these stories. I need to do more of the social media. I need to promote the program more. And build more trust as I do that, but also give them the attention that I think they've earned.
Eric, you hit that word vulnerable. You allow yourself to be vulnerable. And in a lot of these videos, these athletes are showing their vulnerabilities, right? Whether it's their battles with epilepsy or maybe not having the success that they'd wanted on the mat, and just different varying levels of the struggles that they've had to overcome in life. How do you think you showing them vulnerability as a coach helps them as athletes and as students to grow?
Well, I was going to be a teacher 3 different times, an elementary school teacher. So I was accepted to the College of Education, and then I joined the Army, and then while in the Army, I tried to be a teacher again, but my assignments didn't line up. I got out. I went to UCCS. I was going to be a teacher, worked in the school system. But the idea of modeling is something that's common throughout the military in leadership, teaching, parenting, modeling that behavior that you want your program to be. And if you expect them to be honest and respectful and truthful and come to you to tell you the hard things, I get a little emotional in this one, but we talked about suicide, where I reached out to you and said, hey, what's the education for coaches? I've been fortunate to get that through the military and be working in the hospital system or the military health system here in Colorado. And I've had experience. So when that moment came where they trusted me enough to say, hey, I'm having bad thoughts right now, that was the point of, if I wasn't vulnerable, I wouldn't have built that respect. I wouldn't have built that trust. You can't get to trust without being vulnerable and transparent. And that's sort of the reinforcement for me to go, well, I'll just keep being vulnerable and emotional, and we'll see where it goes. I'm not imposing it on the wrestlers, but I think because I am the way I am, and I've been this way for so long, because that consistency, they start figuring out, well, this is how Coach Eric is. And these are the left and right limits too. Like I said, 2 of the families came on the hike with us, and we were talking about one day somebody dropped the F-bomb, I think it was, or a swear word. And I'm like, well, there's 4 letters in that swear word, and you multiply by 4. So we're doing 16 bear crawls down the hallway. I forgot about it, but they remembered it. But they know what the limits are too, what's appropriate and what's not. And within those limits, we're going to be trusting and have an environment of trust that is safe and respectful. And like I said, grows the sport. So
What are your numbers? Your numbers at Vista Ridge since you've been there? Have you seen growth? Have you seen great retention? How is this ability for you to be vulnerable and include the athletes and listen? How's that worked out?
Well, consistency, you have to be consistent in all this stuff. They know if you're faking it, right? People know, especially kids, they know if you're faking. So after 4 years, the ones who have come through the program know, and you don't get through to everyone. It's not 100%. We've had kids quit. I've had parents upset at me. I've had wrestlers upset at me and the other coaches, which is fine. That's part of the game, but we're going to be consistent in these values that we're trying to do. But with the girls program, we started out with Bella and Gabby, who graduated this past year. Gabby quit halfway through her first year, but then came back her sophomore year and finished strong. But it was those two. And then the next year we had 5, and then the next year we had 9, and then this past year we had 14. And with the girls, we had 14 girls start, and all 14 wrestled at regionals to finish. So that's a huge positive for that. And then on the boys' side, we have some girls where their brother is a senior and they came in as a freshman. We have one wrestler, Riley, he placed at JV State this year, and his sister is going to be a sophomore and she's going to wrestle next year. So she's been doing the off-season stuff. So you have the girls growing the boys and the boys helping to grow the girls. And we really put a big emphasis on, we are a wrestling family. And that's the idea of Cry Wolf, where these are the overarching values for the entire year. And within that year, we have our folk style season at Vista Ridge, but we're going to do our leadership program. We're going to go on hikes. We're going to do these other team building, events to grow the sport that way, where they're telling their friends, it's hard, but it's fun, but it's hard, right? And it's safe, and we're a family, and I made great friends. And I think that's how you build a program. They have to promote the program, the wrestlers themselves and the parents and the coaches. We just got to be careful not to mess that up.
Eric, could you kind of set up a couple of these videos for us and just kind of give us a little bit of background on what we're going to see?
Okay, so like with Gabby Norman, I'll start with that one because that was the first. The video, she's talking about her sister. They've had some challenges in their life growing up, and her sister was our team manager the freshman year, and then Gabby talked her into wrestling her sophomore year, and then they talked in their third sister to wrestle, and their brother wrestles, and then their younger sister is all excited about wrestling. And apparently I've committed to, I have to coach until she graduates, and I think she's in 2nd grade, so I got 11 years left. But they're a wrestling family, and like any normal family, you struggle with bills, you struggle with your, buying shoes, and when you have a family of 5 and running a daycare, and they're just a good family that committed to the program. And what Gabby wanted to do was sort of say thank you to Angel. So it's an homage to her.
I've always been told that high school is just a small portion of my life that will go by quickly. I never believed anyone when they said that because high school felt like hell. There was just one thing that would make all the madness worth it in the end, and that is the great, difficult, and challenging sport of wrestling. Before I get into my fond memory that I had to choose out of my many, many memories, out of my 7 years of wrestling, I should probably tell you why I started wrestling in the first place. I was sad and angry growing up because of my dad, so I needed an outlet. I also needed a place to fit in, but that's besides the point. Frankly, I wanted to beat up boys, but it just wasn't that simple. I wanted to join the wrestling team, and my mom was hesitant, but eventually gave in. I was one out of 2 girls on a full team of boys. That came with its own trials and tribulations. Basically, I joined because I was mad at the world. Wrestling became the light of my life after a few years, so much to where I quit choir because it wasn't a family. Me and this longtime friend of mine called wrestling have been through a lot together. We've been through wins, losses, close calls, and not close enough. We've had the OTC, the incline, 14ers, camps, long days and nights, eating disorders, bad weeks, great weeks. There are too many memories to where it makes it hard to just choose one, but I think I found my fondest memory. In January of 2018, the Vista Ridge girls wrestling team went to regionals at Eagle Crest High School. I was so nervous, my hands were clammy, and I could hear my heart beating in my ears as if it was on speaker. My sister and best friend came to me before my first match, and she told me, "You can do this, Babby. It's okay to be nervous, but do it for me and I'll win mine for you." We started winning for each other that day. The match was long and I was tired. There was a lot of back and forth, but I got the perfect arm throw. In the end, I ended up winning the match. After my arm was raised, I shook the coach's hands, checked into the table. I ran into the arms of my sister. We were crying because she was so proud of me. We sat there and hugged for what felt like hours, just crying and saying how much we loved each other. Shortly after we separated, I told her that now she had to win her match, and she did. Angelique Norman has inspired me to be better and do the best I can at everything. She recently told me that what we had feared is coming to a reality and that she's going to miss me. She's going into her senior year of high school. I'll be a freshman in college, but right now I'm making a promise to her that I will give my all in college. I won't give up, and every match I win will not only be for myself, but will indefinitely be for her.
Dakota, once she saw the other 3 videos, she came to me and asked if she could do a video. So this is where I'll get emotional. So we had a wrestler, he passed away, Isaac Cooper. So we have the Isaac Cooper Perseverance Award. But we established the award at Sand Creek before he passed away because he had brain surgery, and 7 months later, he hiked the incline. And I think it took us almost 3 hours, but he got to the top. And I just found it so inspirational. He got pinned every match. He never won a match. He'd be at practice, have a seizure, and 20 minutes later get cleaned up, come back to practice. And having that cycle repeat itself with Dakota. And we recognized her with the Isaac Cooper Perseverance Award, and his family is still involved with the program. So with her being recognized, she didn't think she earned it. And we had some words, and she said, "Hey, I'd like to do a story because I think it'd help other wrestlers." So she volunteered to do that, thinking it would help someone else. I get emotional about that one. They're all awesome stories.
What is wrestling with epilepsy really like? I would like to share my story and help others who are struggling with the same thing. This is my story and my experiences. Everyone's experiences are different and they all struggle in their own ways. Wrestling is a tough sport, but even harder when you have epilepsy. In August of 2019, I was diagnosed with a neurological condition called epilepsy. At that moment, I thought my life was pretty much over because I was not allowed to do the things I once enjoyed doing, like climbing trees, playing softball, and dancing or driving. I have never thought about wrestling, but it has always interested me. When I first brought the idea up to my mom and my neurologist, they were both very hesitant. But since my meds were working, I was able to join the Vista Ridge girls wrestling team. At first, I was doing great. Then I started to have more episodes than normal. My coach is a trained EMT, has coached a prior wrestler with epilepsy, and was always there, so we had no concern of me being in danger. I continued to fight and keep pushing during practices and tournaments. I would have at least 3 episodes a week, but that didn't stop me. Everyone kept telling me to be safe and stop when I needed a break. Did I listen? No, I did not. Eventually, I learned to wrestle with my epilepsy. Even after an episode, I would get right back to practice as if nothing ever happened. It got easier throughout the season. There was this one tournament and I had a seizure on the mat during my first match. I had to forfeit that match, and I was honestly upset but knew it was my best interest. The doctor at this tournament wanted to pull me from the rest of the tournament. I was not going to let this happen without a fight. I called my mom and had her talk to the doctor, and she had to explain that I would be fine and could wrestle my last 3 matches that day. I got to wrestle my last 3 matches and ended up placing 3rd that tournament. That taught me that you will have to fight for what you want to convince people that you can do anything no matter your health issues. Learning to fight through my epilepsy and continue to wrestle even when I had every reason to quit was a huge confidence booster for me. I would tell anyone going through the same thing that you can do it and to just give yourself a break when you need it. I would like to thank my coaches for always being there and believing in me. No matter what you are going through, you can do whatever you put your mind to. In our wrestling program, we have 3 practice rules. 1, practice will end. 2, you can always do one more. 3, you will pass out before you die. You will learn to fight and survive anything that is put into your path.
Dakota, you just won your first high school match. How do you feel?
Great.
How'd you win it?
By the arm throw.
And then what?
And then I did a half on top of her.
Now that you won, what are you going to do?
Keep going.
Thanks for sharing those videos with us, Eric. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing more of them because obviously they're powerful stuff and they're really telling the stories that need to be heard in the wrestling community. I am curious, when you're making the videos, are you nervous about showing them to the athletes for the first time and what their reaction to them is going to be? Because, you know, these aren't highlight clips. They are delving into, you know, personal matters and really exposing wrestlers' vulnerability. So what's kind of going through your head when you're compiling them and thinking about other people watching them?
Well, I hope they like them, but I put a lot of effort into getting to know the athletes, getting to know the families, and like I said before, vulnerable, letting them know me. Where I've had dinners at the parents' house. We've gone out. We've had drinks. We've gone to picnics. We've done hiking. So it's not just we're not just interacting in wrestling. So what that allows me to do is get to know the family and get to know some of the background of them. And one thing we do every year is they have to pick an alter ego fight name. So like Gabby Mighty Mouse Norman, she's 4'10" and powerful, so that's her fight name. Angel will probably kill me, but please leave this in. So her sister Angel, she had her 2 front teeth knocked out by a softball bat, so she can click her front teeth out. So that's where Ruthless Toothless came from. And just all their alter ego fight names, they have meaning. I won't embarrass Bella, and if she'll see this, and you know what I'm talking about, Bella. I'll leave it at that. But she changed her fight name to the Wrecker because she tipped over a car, got in a car accident this past year, and she's a wrecker on the mat. Cheyenne Diaz, hers is Crusher because she crushes at life. She just hit 3 years as a cancer survivor. So getting to know the family, getting to know their stories, and like I said, building that trust with the family where I'm gonna communicate in a respectful way. When I hear their story, I'm like, oh, I remember this picture goes with it, or this video goes with it, or this event, or this would help tell the story. I can tell their story. So yeah, I want them to like it, but I wouldn't say nervous. I'm more excited, and I get emotional because you're putting together the song and the video and the pictures, and then you're going through everything. And you're like, oh, I remember that. No, I remember that. So you're looking for one picture, but you find 10 more, and then you're often, you know, a different part of the video, which is why they take me so long. But going down that memory lane is, I don't know, it's therapeutic for me too, to self-reflect and, you know, self-reflect on them and then be able to text and follow up. And the way our texts work, 100% of the text, if I text Gabby, her mom's on it. So we have the mom and or dad or both. So the parents know everything we're saying to the wrestlers, which again, that transparency, which I think every coach should do. If you're nervous, if you're saying something to wrestlers and you're nervous what the parents are going to think or what the wrestlers are going to think, well, then maybe you need to self-reflect a little bit and, you know, check yourself, right? So I wouldn't say I'm nervous. I'm more excited and emotional, and, you know, and then when I see it again, when they're watching it, I get emotional again. And I've seen it, you know, 100 times, but yeah, so more excited than nervous, I think.
You guys have a chant, that kind of like a breakout chant?
That developed this past year. So the first Monday in December, I think it was December 8th, I had gone to an NCAA or NWCA, National Wrestling Coaches Association, the CEO Scholastic Leadership course. It was at Meade High School. I was surprised there wasn't more coaches there. There was like 20 of us, I think, or 24. And we connected with the Marines. And one of the things they do is they say, we'll come in and run a practice for you, and we'll give them our fitness test and our combat fitness test. So that's a video I'm going to post also of just that day. But we went until dark, and it was dark and it was cold. We had one wrestler, Angel Norman, she had gotten choked out that weekend before, tapped out on the mat, and it started the syncope panic attack issue. Dakota, she had a seizure and had to sit out. It was a hard, taxing, mentally, physically thing. And then at the end, one of our parents, who happened to, he's done a lot of special, he was a Marine and did a lot of special operations and cool guy stuff in the military. And he put all the wrestlers in the circle, and they have their arms on each other's shoulders. So they're in a circle with their arms up, and he has them squat down. So they're like in a 90-degree sit as an entire group. And we have, 35 or 40 wrestlers in this circle. And he starts at 1 in push-up position on their knees. And they stayed there until he hand walked all the way across all their knees, that entire circle. It was a long time. I think the video was like, it was like 27 minutes, I think they were. And then he'd have them doing down squats. So down, up, and in between, he'd be giving them inspirational, when your coach is getting hard on you, and when you feel down, they're doing this because they love you. And the breakdown was one heart, one mind, one life was what he had them break down, which came from his military experience. And it was just so powerful of a moment to bring the team together. The girls did it at a tournament, and I caught it on video. And then I said, you know what, that's our chant. We just kept doing it. So it's a good message. Again, it's tying in that parent trust. And he's a firefighter here in Colorado Springs, paramedic firefighter. Just a awesome guy, awesome support of the program. But he was able to bring that in. And I got pictures from last year. He has a PT log. So it's a portion of a telephone pole. And when the girls showed up, he was standing out watering it. And they're like, what are you watering that for? Well, because it adds like 40 pounds or whatever. And he had them do log PT last year. But that was the team event. And then after, they had nachos and whatever else. But it's the parents and, like I said, the wrestlers taking ownership that really are taking the program to the next level. Makes it easier for me.
It's awesome. Quite a culture.
Trying.
Well, that's the key, right? Is it never ends. We can always get better. Our program can always get better. And it's not just about the wins and losses. It's much more about that human connection. Love what you're doing.
What do you think the best reaction you've gotten to an athlete video has been?
I don't know. That's actually a hard one. The best reaction is when they share it or they comment on it, or the simple thing, they just come up and give you a hug. Yeah, it's the little things in coaching for me that keep me going. And just to echo what Mike had said, that culture, it's we're a public high school, so it's an education-based program. So that's where we do these other things where I want them, when they leave the program, doesn't matter how they performed on the mat, but they're a little bit more confident. They're a little bit more hopeful about the future. Not stuck in, it's important to be in the present, but not stuck in the present or stuck in the past, and able to know that, hey, this was a hard time, but I can get through it, and have those coping skills, those resiliency skills to cope. Being in the military, I know people personally that never had those coping skills, never learned them. And some of them turned out very, very tragic, and it's sad. And if, that's kind of my motivation, if I give them a little resiliency to continue on. And I heard there's a podcast I think it was a podcast, and I think she was a soccer coach. I wish I knew her name off the top of my head. I think she was a high-level soccer coach, and she said her definition of success was not how they performed on the field, but how many weddings she got invited to. So that's something. Did you make an impact 10 years down the road? And within about a month, 2 months ago, I went to a graduation. He graduated with his master's degree, and we coached him through high school. And here we are 11 years later going to his graduation party for his master's degree. It's things like that, those long-term connections. A wrestler I taught chess on the bus rides. He's in the Air Force in Japan, and every now and then it'll pop up and, hey, it's your move in chess type of thing. So it's those things years later that you make a difference in one person's life. That's all you need to keep going. And then if they make a difference and you have this multiplying effect, that maybe you can help change the world one day.
You've made a difference in my life and set a great example.
Well,
Thank you so much.
it's mutual, Mike. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, for Mike Willis, Eric Everard, our special guest, thank you so much. And for all of us at USA Wrestling Moments on the Mat, I just want to say thank you. Again, check the drop-down box here. We're going to make sure more of these links from Cry Wolf Wrestling are included. Well, thanks, Eric. You want to sign us off?
One heart, one mind, one life. And I do want to emphasize, I know we talk more about girls wrestling on this talk. I am the head coach for the girls wrestling, but I do want to give the props to the boys who have helped grow the sport. People like Ian Failer and Jamie Snyder and Max Coddington. We have an awesome boys team, and maybe I can connect you with Troy, and we can bring them a little of attention too, but let him talk from his perspective on that. But I want to give a shout out to the boys, because without them helping to grow the sport, we wouldn't be where we are either. It's definitely a mutual, wonderful thing, and I encourage more coaches to do it and embrace it. And love you all. I love the sport. I would rather spend my time anywhere else.